And so, it continues. Hello there, welcome back to the Writing Advice Q&A. I'm your host, Kirin, and my camera is being silly again. Today, I have a question from a viewer, just like you. Remember that every week I take one of your questions from the comments down below and I feature it on this lightning round series. Before going anywhere with our subject of the day, active versus passive versus reactive characters, I wanted to let you know, as always, that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion on what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, definitely not as gospel. Take it just as the ramblings of a silly person who looks a little bit like this. Oh, camera, you are so silly. One day I will unlock your secrets, the secrets of white balance. But until that day, my videos are gonna look really silly. So today's question came from a viewer just like you, and it goes a little bit like this. Hey Max, I'm afraid that my main character may be too passive at the beginning of the story. I've been told that the protagonist should be the one pushing the story forward, but because of story reasons, she can't. What should I do? Alright, here we are. It's been a long while. I think the last time I talked about this was in a Tumblr post. That's how you know it's old. There is this misconception. Wow, suddenly there were god beams everywhere on the preview window. There is this misconception in writing that passive characters are no good, and this is mostly done to the nature in which storytelling is taught to people, and mostly the way that I don't want to say it. English teachers, because the English teachers have to quantify a way to allow you to understand stories. It's the entire reason behind the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a tool for analyzing storytelling, not a tool for writing it. There, I said it. I just said it. Good. You know that feeling where I'm like, yeah, I could ramble for the next half hour. But let's not, because you came here to hear about active versus passive and reactive characters. So, why are passive characters seen as bad? Well, because general storytelling, traditional storytelling, tells you that the character at the center of the story is the protagonist, and they are the ones pushing the story forward, as though the story is some sort of object like a cart or a payload, if you may. And the main character is the one, pushing that whole thing. It's this implication that without them, the story wouldn't go anywhere. And this here is immediately flawed because that's not how the real world works. A single person, no matter how cool they are, don't change the world entirely by themselves. And I'm not talking about secondary characters, I'm not talking about tertiary characters. It just doesn't happen like that. A single person can inspire change, but they themselves are not the person pushing the payload. And the payload doesn't actually exist, but you know what? We're getting really metaphysical right now. Let's take a step back. I think the problem with the problem is that passive characters are not inherently bad. Passive characters and its two siblings, active and reactive characters, are ultimately just different ways of telling stories. Sometimes, the characters at the center of our story fall into one of three categories or archetypes. Please note that I'm holding my fingers, like in quotation fingers right now, because we're right at the edge of making the act of writing some sort of cookbook or recipe, and I despise that with every fiber of my being. But understand that for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to boil down the nature of writing to three elements: active characters, passive characters, and reactive characters. Active characters are characters who are actively moving forward whatever the central struggle is for them. They are at the center of choices and actions. They are the ones, if you could say, pushing the payload. Then we have passive characters who inherently do not have the ability or choose not to advance whatever is the central struggle in their world or in their lives for reasons. Generally, passive characters don't stay passive all the time. Sometimes a passive character is inspired by the actions in the story to take action. This is inherently why I have issues with just saying that passive is always bad, because sometimes people become passive for reasons, or there are people who are passive because of what they believe. But we're already getting too far ahead of ourselves. The last type is reactive characters, and ironically so, most of the time when people say passive, they actually just mean reactive. A reactive character is a character who does not take action until something else happens. They react. For instance, reactive characters are characters like Superman. Superman has to wait until something goes wrong for him to actually jump in and start fixing things. That's also inherently the problem with Superman, because if he was truly a good person, he would just fix all the problems in the world. But hey, let's not talk about DC Comics right now. Reactive characters are also, you could say, the bread and butter of disaster stories, or, I don't want to say it, but let's just say it, the zombie apocalypse. Because let me tell you something, a single person is not going to stop the entire world of the undead, and a single person is not going to stop the earthquake. The characters of these stories are inherently reactive. They are reacting to what's going on around them, and their actions are not driven by their own particular desires and goals, sometimes, but usually by the desire to react to whatever is going on around them. So, characters who are inherently pushing their internal struggle or external struggle, characters who choose or are unable to make those choices, and the characters who are instead reacting to something that is happening to them. All of these are ways of telling a story. All of these are tools. Some may say that they're not all good, but I don't think tools have to be inherently good. What they need to be is just exist within your writer's toolbox, the imaginary collection of abilities and tools that you have that allow you to tell different stories. At the end of the day, I personally would rather have more tools in my toolbox than less. One day, I may find myself requiring a particular character that's not active, a passive character or a reactive character, who knows, but I'd rather have that option, and also internalize to myself that this is not inherently bad. Passive characters are not inherently bad. Sometimes there are characters who don't have the ability to make those choices, or choose not to because of other reasons. I think it's more exciting when we look at these as different options, different ways for a story to develop, as opposed to just saying, no, your main character has to be at the center of everything, and has to push the plot forward, and they have to be the very key to the very answer to everything that is wrong or not right in your world. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's inherently bad either, but I think that more choices and more options will always be better than less options. And we're literally, once again, right on the edge of talking about the meta of writing. And I just want to say one more thing before I start wrapping this up. Writing is, by its own nature, without rules. And I know it's hard to say that when I literally run a channel about writing advice, but I want you to understand that this is not really laws or rules, it's advice, what works for me, what I have found during my experience and my travels. That's why I say that looking at writing by these big terms, well, not really big terms, but these elements that just boil down our characters tends to be, in my opinion, more detrimental, is that the word that I'm looking for? It tends to hinder the act of writing more than it helps you. Because your character is more than just a trait. Your character is more than just a checkbox on their passive, active, or reactive. Your character is a person who can change, and who can, under the weight of the world around them and the choices and the consequences of their choices, become different. Can go from active to passive, and then back to reactive, and then active again. Who knows? I think it makes more sense, dear writerly friend who sent this question, instead of wondering about your character being active or proactive or reactive and all those things, is it better then for you to just write them as they come to you? Be true to them as they come to you. Write them without hesitation, without doubt, without second-guessing yourself. Because your character is more than just a character sheet. It's a real person. And you have to respect them as such. Because also, kind of relating back to your question, it seems to me that you know what you want to do, but you're arriving at this crossroads where people told you that what you want to do is not inherently good or right, and follow your heart. Writing is, by its very own nature, the act of discovery, and who knows where your story is going to take you. Maybe your character will be unable to make the choices or choose not to do so. Maybe they will be at the forefront of changing their world. Who knows? The only way to find out is to keep on writing. So, be a writerly friend, follow your heart, and keep on writing. But for the time being, I hope that this answer helped, and I hope that if anything, I gave you another point of view. With my rambling and my silliness, no, I'm not gonna do a whole video on the hero's journey. I can't. I would just burst into flames. I hate that thing so much. I hate it. Anyhow, I can feel myself about to rant. So you know what? It's about time to just cut this out. I want to thank you for watching. If you have a question, leave it in the comments down below. And if you have your own thoughts on the question that was answered today, please let me know as well. Wow, God beams everywhere. I want to thank you for watching. New outro, the really quick and easy outro. There should be a button to subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to never miss any of my videos. A link to over to the playlist. There's over 100 writing advice videos right there for you. And there should also be a link to my Patreon if you would like to make sure that I can continue on making videos for the foreseeable future, like this one. Consider becoming a Patreon and getting cool perks like getting to watch my videos early. Or you can also just, treat me to a coffee. But for the time being, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll see you on the next one.